Hello and welcome to a Thursday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern time on this Thursday, where the long All-Star break in the NBA is now through. We are back in action. The home stretch of the NBA season resumes tonight. A very full slate for you in the NBA as everybody begins play following that All-Star break. What a wild night it was on a Wednesday in college basketball, just a few days away from the month of March. As we always say, DRS, the madness does not wait until March. It was chaos on a Wednesday in late February. All of that and more over these next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, a couple road teams ranked in the top 20 last night went on the road and lost by 1 point here. Also a magical game down there in Alabama between the Florida Gators and the Alabama Crimson Tide. And yes, you nailed it as well. The NBA is back in our lives. Hot topics all the way through the college football playoff. We might be able to talk about this every single day until we kick off the 2024 season, because it seems like we're getting changes on a day-to-day basis. And I got to say right now, I don't hate these changes that I'm hearing.
Boo! Boo! For the changes, something that is not broke does not need fixing. We'll talk about what that latest update was last night following a meeting in Dallas, Texas on a Wednesday afternoon. We are going to start with college basketball, but before we do, let's bring in that SportsGrid radio audience here. Opening hour of a Thursday, live right here on the early line. You're listening on Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. A stunner last night in Baton Rouge between LSU and Kentucky. The Cats had won 3 straight games, ranked inside the top 20 this week, and were battling it out with LSU late throughout that basketball game. Rob Dillingham took over. Kentucky had a 1-point lead in the final seconds. LSU had an opportunity to go down and win it. Shot was blocked. Jordan Wright gets his own block shot attempt, throws it back up. Tyrell Ward, a prayer at the buzzer. It goes in. LSU pulls off the outright upset, booked as a 5.5-point home underdog, 75-74, the final in Baton Rouge.
This is the curse of Kentucky right now, how talented they are, but still not able to put it together yet. Still a couple games left in the regular season in the SEC, and then, of course, the conference tournament. But you can't lose these games. Like, yes, it is tough to win on the road, but a 6-0 run to start that second half and up by 15 points Kentucky was, to end up losing that game is utterly ridiculous here. But those are the learning curve games you're going to need for a Kentucky team that has a lot of young players. Maybe they'll learn something from that. But this is also why I look at Kentucky as a legitimate chance to make a run in the tournament, and at the same time, Ben, a legitimate chance to make the tournament and get bounced early.
LSU has now won outright as an underdog in 2 consecutive games against a ranked SEC foe. They blasted South Carolina over the weekend and knocking off Kentucky last night. The Tigers have had to come back from a 15-point deficit in both. They do so. What a game it was in Tuscaloosa as we stay in the SEC. A very lofty total, the over-under 174.5 pregame between Alabama and Florida. Our only top 25 tilt, ranked versus ranked last night. It goes to the extra session, and in overtime, the Crimson Tide pull away. 98-93 over that number of 174.5, but Florida does cover as a 7.5-point road underdog.
Got the all-important cover in that game, as we saw this balloon at some outlets here, Ben, up to 10 points at game time. And quite frankly, the Florida Gators were the better team for 99% of and still came away with the loss. It was a fun game overall, but sometimes when the handicaps land perfectly here, Florida doesn't have a very good defense, but the one thing they can do is disrupt your three-point game. Only 25% from the three-point range for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Still good enough for them to win that game in overtime here, but we got the cover with the Florida Gators, and that's what's most important to me.
42 combined points for the Tide's 2 transfers last night. Grant Nelson, 22 from North Dakota State. Aaron Estrada, the pride of Hofstra, now in Tuscaloosa. 20 points for the Crimson Tide as well. They have been great at home in SEC play, even dating back to last season. What a wild ride it was last night inside Rec Hall, not Bryce Jordan, Rec Hall in State College, Pennsylvania. Penn State down by 10 points with 2.5 minutes against 12th ranked Illinois. They were down by 7 under 40 seconds remaining. The Nittany Lions storm all the way back and then storm the floor inside Rec Hall. Penn State pulls off a stunner, 90-89, the victory for the Nittany Lions. They win outright as a 7.5-point home underdog.
I thought it was a great matchup for Illinois. And again, for 80% of that game, it was a great matchup, and it was a cover for Illinois. But not only did they not cover, they blew that game late. And it's one of those where you see coming. If you just watch the highlights of the final minute, you need like 6 things to go your way if you're Penn State just to be in that ball game. And they didn't get 6 things, Ben. They got 7 things to go their way in an outright victory here, 90-89. Bad loss for Illinois. I thought they would handle their business fairly easily, and they didn't. Didn't even win the game.
Jameel Brown made a 3-pointer for the Nittany Lions with 35 seconds left, then forced a steal on the ensuing inbounds pass to Puff Johnson, put back up and in for a layup. And then Coleman Hawkins missed 2 free throws. One of the all-time smack talkers in the Big Ten misses 2 from the charity stripe and then fouls Zach Hicks on a 3-point attempt. And Hicks made all 3 free throws to give Penn State a massive upset at home. Duke, meanwhile, not upset on the road against Miami. The Blue Devils have now won 16 of their last 18 and make that 5 straight, an 84-55 rout on the road in Coral Gables against Miami. The Dukies cover as a 6.5-point favorite. Donnie playing their best basketball here as we approach March.
Yeah, I thought they would win going away in this one. Miami just hasn't been the Miami we expect them to be this season, coming off of a great run last year. And by the way, they don't defend the 3-point line, and Duke took advantage of that. 13 from 29, which is good for 45%, pasting the Miami Hurricanes. In one of those games, it's like, hey, Miami, do you want to make a last stand here? You're at home. You got to be able to beat a top 10 team. Weren't able to do that. Not only that, they got smoked at home, Ben.
MLS opener for Inter Miami. Leo Messi, an assist. Luis Suarez, his debut for Inter Miami. They knock off Real Salt Lake 2-0. Is it Real Salt Lake if we're in the States, or is it Real because it's soccer?
Yeah, it's a real Salt Lake out there in Utah, so it should be Real Salt Lake. Come on.
A 2-0 win for Inter Miami in their MLS debut this season. College football playoff expansion after expansion, which hasn't even technically started yet. We haven't played a game in the 12-team format, and they're already talking about 14 teams starting in 2026.
Yeah, the NCAA listens to this show. Like that boy Donnie Wright's got some ideas. Let's not stop here. Let's keep moving the charts, baby. More teams in the playoff, more fun for everyone.
The NCAA doesn't control the college football playoff. Gleyber Torres, by the way, wants to remain a Yankee for life despite being an impending free agent. College basketball next. Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Fiorio doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets and when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What a wild Wednesday night it was in college basketball. Multiple top 25 teams on the road go down and are upset outright by a home underdog. We also only had one top 25 tilt, ranked side versus ranked side, and that took place in Tuscaloosa, Alabama and Florida. A great game where the Crimson Tide were booked as a pregame 9.5-point favorite with one of the highest over-unders you will see in the sport of men's college basketball. 174.5, that because of overtime goes over the number. Alabama prevails in that extra session, 98-93. The Gators do cover as nearly a double-digit underdog. Florida now 4-1 against the spread as a dog in SEC play, but Alabama remains perfect at home in SEC action this season, now 11-2 in conference play overall.
Yeah, nobody's surprised here that Alabama almost hit 100 points again. Now, granted, you did need overtime where they picked up 13 extra points, but you always know in a game like this where we expected tempo with an extremely high total in the ball game where no team was ever going to be out of this. And quite frankly, it was a back-and-forth affair, which seemed to be the Florida Gators getting the best of the Alabama Crimson Tide for most of the night until the end of the game when it counted here. And also in overtime, as a backer, when you take a dog, you know how that works out. You have a great handicap. It's tied at the end of regulation. You got 8, 9, 10 points to deal with, and it evaporates quickly because we know if you get a 2 or 4 point lead early, you start to press as the other team, then you start to foul, you're in the double bonus because it's overtime, and you get those free looks here. So at least Florida was able to hold on at the end of that game. But this is one of those games you look forward to also from the Florida Gators moving forward. They show how talented they are at times here, just letting some of these games slip away. And when you take a look coming into conference championship play and then into March Madness, these are one-off games here. You see the talent with the Florida Gators. They can go toe-to-toe one of the best teams in the country in their own building here. And also, Alabama, ultra efficient on offense, loves the three-point shot. You go on the road and you stymie them from the three-point line. Florida should have won that ball game, but looking forward to March Madness here, I'm not taking anything away from the Gators. I liked what I saw out of both teams last night. A lot of fun, a lot of scoring, and a lot of covering for your boy DRS.
Florida now 18-8. Overall, 8-5 in SEC action. The net rankings have not been updated as of this morning. Still too early here on the early line. But Florida entered last night in Tuscaloosa 29th in the net. They are very much in position to have an at-large bid, really not even on the bubble, firmly into the NCAA tournament field of 68 right now. And they'll probably be a 8, 9, 10 seed, something of the sort. It may be a very dangerous one at that. Will Clayton Jr. last night, 27 points, game high, leading Florida. Again, 4-1 against the spread as a dog in SEC play. Alabama now over in 9 of its last 11 games. That is Nate Oates basketball, 2 of the 40 fastest tempos in college hoops on display last night in Tuscaloosa. We stay in the SEC for a thriller down in the Bayou. The Bayou Bengals of LSU, the unranked home underdog against the ranked road team, 17th ranked Kentucky, who entered winning 3 straight games on the road in SEC play and was booked as a 5.5-point favorite. What a wild final 40 seconds it was. LSU had a 4-point lead under a minute left. Rob Dillingham took over for Kentucky. The talented freshman, a hoop and a harm, the game-leading jumper under 20 seconds remaining. LSU comes down. They look for a bucket with Jordan Wright. It is stuffed. He grabs his own stuff off the deflection, throws it back up, and as time expires, there is Tyrell Ward for LSU. The game-winning bucket at the buzzer, 75-74, the victory for the Bayou Bengals. Donnie, they win outright as a 5.5-point home dog.
So talented, but still coming up short here at times here for the University of Kentucky. If you tell me they're going to go on the road and be perfect, Ben, from the free throw line and also shoot an additional 40% from the three-point line, you should be able to come away with a victory. And also being up 15 points at one point in the second half, right after the first minute of play on back-to-back three-point shots. Then you take a look at this Kentucky team. Reeves was wonderful, 25 points in 33 minutes. Dillingham coming off the bench, playing 22 minutes and giving you 23 points. And then there's the players you expect to step up and say you're no longer fresh. Guys like DJ Wagner, who played 21 minutes in this game, didn't even score a point here. These are some of the guys that have to step up in those biggest moments, but it's a team still learning how to win at this point. Yes, they should have won that game, but now Cal maybe has their ear and goes, you know what? We're up 15. We let this slip away. Let's not draw back on that again. Let's close these games out on the road. Because granted, it's still hard to win, and the SEC is a very good basketball conference. But for Kentucky, with a 15-point lead on the road, you got to close the door on LSU. They weren't able to do that last night, Ben.
And that 15-point advantage evaporated quick in the second half. LSU had already tied the game up with about 13 minutes and 40 seconds remaining at 46 all. Kentucky now, after they snapped their 2-game win streak, has gone under in 3 straight. If there is a benefit, Kentucky is playing better defense, not as much of a track meet as we have seen throughout the early portion of this season for the Cats. Again, LSU, 2 consecutive wins over ranked opponents. South Carolina over the weekend against Kentucky last night. Duke playing its best basketball here near the end of February. John Shire in year number 2 has the Blue Devils playing some great hoops at the moment. A 29-point victory margin last night on the road in Coral Gables against Miami, 84-55. Duke booked as a 6.5-point favorite, did not suffer the similar fate that we saw last night of a ranked team on the road, booked as a favorite, losing outright to a home underdog. Total of 148.5 stays well under because Duke D'd up against Miami. 5 straight wins for the Blue Devils, 5 straight covers, 5 straight unders.
Yeah, really good performance by the Duke Blue Devils and expected from my end of it here. But also it's more of a microcosm of what's going actually on with the Miami Hurricanes this year. So much talent coming back. Now, granted, still a little bit banged up at this time in the season. Reworked NIL deals. You make a good run in the playoffs, in March Madness last year. You're just not able to replicate that. 15-12, barely above 500, now sinking to 6-10 over on the ACC, which some years you would say, man, like, hey, man, ACC is really tough at this point. It's not a tough ACC this year, at least as tough as what we've seen in the past few years, but don't take anything away from Duke. Going on the road, shooting 52% as a team, which included 45% from three-point range. But the same questions are rising up for Miami. They just haven't been a good offensive team, particularly in ACC play. They shoot 31% from the floor as a home team, 24% from three-point range. That's not going to get it done even in a close game. They get blasted by 30 last night, and you're right. Duke is playing really good basketball at the right time.
You know what's so interesting about Miami? Not even the run to the Final Four last year. 2 consecutive trips to the Elite Eight, and a lot of that talent back, although they did lose Isaiah Wong and to name a few others. But a disappointing and interesting season for the Canes, to say the least. Now we go out to the Mountain West, which might be the best league in college basketball. 6 of the 11 teams from the conference seem as though they are set to be in the NCAA tournament as of this moment. And what a game we had out in New Mexico. The Lobos booked as a 7.5-point home favorite, despite being the unranked side against 22nd ranked Colorado State, do prevail 68-66, but it wasn't easy. New Mexico up by 8, under 6.5 minutes remaining. Colorado State comes all the way back to make it a ball game. New Mexico does prevail at home, 68-66.
Yeah, one of the few games I missed out on yesterday. I thought the Colorado State Rams would have been a nice play at over 74.5. They come up short at 66. Would have been nice for that game to actually go to overtime, but it didn't. But looking at two teams that aren't ultra relying on the three-point line, you take a look at Colorado State shooting 30% from the three-point line last night and then 33% for New Mexico here. The tempo was there, just didn't get the shot making. 41% from the floor for Colorado State and then 37% from the floor for New Mexico. But these two teams at the top of the standings, both probably headed towards March Madness. That's a close game we anticipated here, but yet again, a team that's ranked going on the road against a team that's unranked got the win, just not the cover last night for that home team.
7 lead changes in the final minute and 30 seconds of regulation between CSU and New Mexico last night. Keep the name Isaiah Stevens close in your mind, a stud for Colorado State that could make some noise in the big dance. More around college basketball up next here on the Early Line. Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilkes' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on this Thursday, still recapping a wild Wednesday night in college basketball with just 1 week left in the month of February before March. What does all the madness already happening mean for the sport as we get into the craziest month of the calendar year? Last night, Donnie, a big trend emerged. We saw 3 home underdogs pull off an outright upset against a ranked foe. That includes in the Atlantic 10, George Mason. A stunner last night at home for George Mason, 71-67, the final against the Dayton Flyers, who entered as a 3.5-point home favorite. They were 11-2 in A10 play, 3.5-point road favorite, I should say. But George Mason has now covered in its last 4 games as an underdog in A10 play, including 2 outright victories. A big win for George Mason last night.
How do you pull off the upset here? Well, why don't you shoot 29% from three-point range at home while the road team that's better than you shoots 42%? How does that happen? Taking advantage, Ben, of the free throw line. You see Dayton goes on the road and shoots 10 of 14, which isn't bad, 70% roughly as a team. But flip that over to George Mason, 24 of 29 from the charity stripe, 83% as a team. That's how you make up those extra possessions here. But didn't it feel like this was one of those games that fits the mold? And also on radio yesterday on Moneyline, Kevin and I talked about this game. It's like, Donnie, what do you think about Dayton? I haven't paid all that much attention, to be honest, to the A10 this year. I'm like, okay, 11-2 going on the road. Hey, could Dayton be one of those teams that can surprise and be one of those, hey, you know what? We can win 2 games here, make it to a Sweet 16. But this is one of those that shows us it's, again, really hard to win no matter what conference you're in or who's actually the home team here. Dayton should have won that game going away, but George Mason bit them. And that's quite frankly what we've been seeing for the past couple weeks here. Ranked teams on the road getting beat outright here, and it happened again last night in the A10.
One of the great underrated stories in college basketball this year, certainly in the A10, Tony Skinn, his first year as the head coach for George Mason. He was a part of that Patriots team under Jim Larinaga way back in 2006 that made the run to the Final Four. So Skinn back at his alma mater. George Mason 18-8. Unless they win the A10 tournament, they are not going to go to the NCAA tournament this year, but building in the right way in Fairfax. 3 straight wins for George Mason. We shared they have covered in their last 4 games as an underdog in A10 action. So here we are again. 3 home underdogs. Last night winning outright against a ranked opponent. We saw it with LSU at the buzzer. The wild finish inside Rec Hall in State College, Pennsylvania. For Penn State, the upset over Illinois. And George Mason gets in on the fun in the A10. An outright upset over Dayton. Donnie, a couple of other trends to pay attention to. New Mexico was the unranked home favorite last night against Colorado State. The Lobos do not cover as a 7.5-point home favorite, but in the month of February, home unranked favorites against a ranked road team, now 8-3 straight up, 7-4 against the spread. Another scenario we saw last night in the only top 25 tilt that we had, Florida against Alabama. The home team in those top 25 matchups, now 30-8 this season, 23-13-2 against the spread. All of those big trends, something to pay attention to here down the home stretch of conference action. 5-6 games left in the high major level before we get to conference tournaments and really where that madness intensifies.
Yeah, and also you're saying you could have used that sort of play last night on the Miami Hurricanes at home. Now, they got smoked here, but it seems like that trend's setting up like, okay, we got 5 or 6 games left in our season to make a stand. We need one of these quad one victories to try to impress the committee here. And you're seeing more than not these teams at home upsetting ranked opponents, which are massive wins and great for the schedule makers here moving forward to say, you know what, look at these games that we won. We are playing our best basketball down the stretch. So maybe you can put that in your pocket here. We'll see how it finishes up. But usually when trends are this hot, they tend to even out. We'll see if it does, but right now it doesn't look like anything stopping this trend here from not working anymore.
The only other ranked team in action last night that we have not mentioned yet in the opening hour of this show, 7th-ranked Marquette. After getting drubbed by 28 on the road in Hartford against UConn over the weekend, the Golden Eagles respond. If you want to bounce back, you want DePaul into your arena. The Blue Demons now 0-15, winless in Big East play. Marquette put up 105 They won 105-71. The Golden Eagles covering as a 26.5-point home favorite. Cam Jones, a game-high 34 points for Shaka Smart's team. Now we take that into the big picture conversation where the national championship odds are in the final week of February before March, with it on the horizon from where they were at the very beginning of this season in early November. UConn, the defending national champs, had a 22-1 price before the year got underway. We're not the favored side then. Now the shortest number at 5-1. Houston and Purdue both at 8-1. The Boilers entered the year with one of the two shortest prices, and that price has gone even shorter by $3 at 8-1. Houston in the Big 12, we had some questions now playing with the big boys. The Cougs in first place with sole possession of that top spot in the Big 12 Conference at this moment. $12 shaved off that price. $14 off the number for Arizona. 25-1 before the year, now plus 1,100. Tennessee, the price is shorter. North Carolina, the price is shorter. Alabama, the price is shorter. Those, the 7 best numbers as we approach the month of March all around college basketball.
Yeah, if you were guessing right on those two ball clubs there up at the top of that graphic, Connecticut and Houston, now sitting at 5-1 and 8-1, when you could have got them over 20-1 a piece. It seems like a fantastic number. We'll see where they wind up, but it's probably not going to get back to 10-1, 12-1, 14-1. Those prices are gone, but it's interesting also to see Purdue still hanging around that level. But I don't get upset about, we really missed out on those numbers. No, as you pointed out, the goal is to cash in a ticket here. And if you're taking a look and say, well, Donnie, I really don't even bet futures until we see the brackets, well, you're probably a smart man for doing that, as opposed to betting these numbers right now, because it's always apparent and the arguments always come through on Selection Sunday. We'll talk about it right away. Wow, did you see UConn, the number 1 overall seed? They got the easiest break here, but my goodness, the number 2 overall seed, the Houston Cougars, they might have the hardest, ticket here or path to try even to get to the Final Four, or yet alone the Elite 8 at this point. So we'll watch it play out as it goes, but it's interesting to see how some of those big numbers, but also if you would have asked us now right at the beginning of the season, hey, by the way, UConn and Houston are going to be really good. Yeah, we probably would have expected that. So maybe you jump on those total numbers that you saw at the beginning of the season. But for my money now, also with Houston, we were worried about them starting the Big 12 season. Hey, look at that. A couple losses in a row. Maybe they're not cut out here for this Power 5 conference. But granted, they are cut out for it. They're going to do damage in March. But interesting to see those numbers nonetheless.
Houston has now been the number 1 ranked team in the Ken Palm efficiency ratings that looks at the entire country in college basketball at a 362 at the D1 level. Houston has been number 1 now for 86 consecutive days and counting. A huge one for the Cougs on the road on Saturday in Waco against top 15 Baylor after the Bears suffered a defeat a couple of nights ago on the road in Provo against BYU. Donnie just made an excellent point that I really want to hammer home. When you look, and it's hard to compare, I guess, sports at times, but look at the odds from way back at the beginning of the year in November. Purdue was one of the co-favorites at an 11-1 number. That is a very long price. UConn, the reigning national champs, were 22-1, and that was one of the 5 best numbers available to bet to win a national championship this year in men's college basketball. Look at the NBA before the year got underway. Boston, Milwaukee, plus 380. Denver and Phoenix, plus 550. Short numbers. Look at next year in the National Football League. The Niners around a 5-1 price at this moment to win Super Bowl 59. Even in college football, Georgia is a 3-1 favorite. Those postseason tournaments in the playoffs that we see in those respective sports are a lot different than what we love about March. It is madness for a reason, but it is also the NCAA tournament, a part of a field of 68 where you have to play your best for a 2.5-week stretch over the span of 6 games if you want to cut down the nets as a national champion. That's why the odds are so long before the year gets underway, because it's relatively random. You can be the best team in the country throughout the entirety of the regular season over a sample size of 30-plus games. If you have one bad night in the round of 32, it does not matter. Donnie, that's why we say, you made the point right there, unless you are really convinced that one of these teams that you will see in the top 10 of the national championship odds is your team to get to the Final Four, to win a national championship, to provide you profitability on that number, it probably doesn't make sense to bet these prices until the bracket is revealed in 24 days on Selection Sunday, because the best coaches in college basketball will tell you our resume be damned, our seed line be damned. It does not matter. What only matters is the matchups, thus the path in our region to get to a Final Four and win a national title.
Exactly, and the arguments start right away. The minute Selection Sunday is over, what do? We start taking a look at some teams like, how the heck did they wind up on the 6 line? We thought they should have been a 3 line. And also, if you're not looking at those, born and bred blue blood teams, like let's just say Houston gets a tough draw, you might be looking at 2 great mid-majors in their way with fifth-year seniors aboard, trying to knock you off. Going like, man, I wish they would have been in another bracket at this time. It'll be fun to watch it play out. We'll fire away at that time. But right now, you're sort of in that holding pattern, trying to take those notes and see exactly where these teams wind up. And then once we get to Selection Sunday, you'll be able to go and make an informed decision there and bang away with some pretty good prices.
Note these prices right now. Mark the movement over the next few weeks until Selection Sunday. And then you really start to bet based on what the path looks like through the Midwest region or the East region, based on the 2-7 matchup, so on and so forth. The NBA back in action following the All-Star break. Big picture conversation next. Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway, coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilkes' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The last regular season NBA game that we saw was 3 of them, exactly a week ago tonight, right before the All-Star break in Indianapolis. Then it was All-Star weekend, activities, Friday, Saturday. Of course, the All-Star game on Sunday night. The NBA has been fully off the past 3 days. No action Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. The stretch half of the NBA season resumes tonight. As we have said many a times here on the early line, when the NBA picks up play this evening, it is not the second half of the season. It is the stretch run. It is the postseason push. Every team, all 30 around the NBA, have played at least 53 games this season, most around 55. So everybody has less than 30 games left out of their 82-game regular season to either make some moves into the play-in tournament to be one of the top 6 to avoid the play-in and straight to the playoffs altogether, or focus on the offseason and what the Cabo plans look like and the NBA draft lottery balls will fall like as well. We get you set for the stretch run of this NBA regular season here on this Thursday as we have 12 games around the association following the All-Star break.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch it play out. And the NBA, Ben, as I like to say, is already NBAing out here. If you didn't pay attention yesterday, as we are awaiting the unofficial start to the second half of the season tonight, you know who else is going to wait for that season to start? It's LeBron James here. And you say, well, why would LeBron James be in the news? I don't know. Playing in an All-Star game, having some fun, missing a game or two before the All-Star break because your ankle hurts, coming out of the All-Star break, which is extended, and saying, you know what? Ankle's not up to speed and playing just yet here. So congratulations, Los Angeles Lakers. You got some fun to look forward to, which includes LeBron James basically saying, you know what? It's more important for my image to go out there and play in an All-Star game than actually play in a regular season game, both before the All-Star break and after the All-Star break. And by the way, we're no shame of that here in the city of brotherly love either. Joel Embiid did that a couple years ago with an inflamed knee, played in the All-Star game, then missed more time post-All-Star break. Never stops in the NBA, but I love it.
What a smile on that face. I am sure that very topic might be brought up on the money line. SportsGrid Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern time with Donnie Rightside and LeBron James's biggest fan, Kevin Walsh. The Lakers, one of the 24 teams in action tonight, one of the 12 games in San Francisco against the Golden State Warriors. The Dubs now without LeBron on the other side, booked as a 5.5-point home favorite. We will get to that in just a little bit. But we start with a game of what would it take, NBA edition, for us to look at this stretch run and beyond into the postseason and give our arguments for what it would take for insert X team or player to accomplish insert X feat. For the Milwaukee Bucks, a plus 310 number for Doc Rivers' crew to win the Eastern Conference. Second best price right now at the All-Star break, only behind the Boston Celtics, who are getting closer and closer to even money as the days go on. But still the second best number. And Donnie, it's been a tumultuous season for the Bucks, no doubt. The dismissal of Adrian Griffin, 3-7 now in the 10 games that Glenn Doc Rivers has coached on the sidelines, but still 14 games above 500, as you see, still sitting in that 3 spot in the Eastern Conference standings. What would it take for the Bucks to win the East? Again, that plus 310 number.
It seems like it's going to take a lot here, or let's just say if they do win it is going to take a lot. But watching some of the interviews here over the All-Star break with Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's sort of a two-sided thing because with Malika Andrews the other day, he was basically explaining like, hey, look, I can't wait to get back to work. Like, I won a championship. I won another one. It's not a throwaway season. We're the 3rd seed right now. And the minute we hit that court, let's see if we can gel over the final 20-some-odd games and away we go into the playoffs. But also at the same time, we're getting quotes from Giannis that say, well, what do you want me to do? We've had multiple ownership groups, and now we've had multiple coaches, and I got to get used to new teammates here, and it's a tough run. I mean, come on, man. Like, what side of the card are we actually playing right now? We know Giannis is a tremendous player, 11, 12 years into the league, and they can have a legitimate chance to win the East, but there's a lot more question marks that we're talking about. It used to be, boy, Milwaukee's really talented, and they have Giannis. They'll figure things out, but it does seem like there's a lot of extracurricular activities in that locker room and also in that front office that are plaguing us here, and also it doesn't hurt where, like, the national media is going on in epic rage here just to bang on Doc Rivers every chance they get with only his son basically out here defending him in the streets. And rightfully so, because Doc Rivers doesn't have a background of, hey, look, man, I've been the 4 to 5 teams that weren't very good, and within 2 to 3 years, we were in the NBA Finals and winning championships here. Yes, he does have a championship, but also if you say, hey, Doc, have you been coaching for 25 or whatever plus years in the NBA? You only came up with one championship. Is that really that great? And also, when you take a look at the teams, he's not a reclamation project coach that comes into franchises that have 5 or 6 wins and rebuilds them. He's basically that coach is supposed to be player friendly, like, hey, we're ready to win. We just need a coach that the players can get along with, and away you go with a championship. And it hasn't happened here. So my answer to this for the Milwaukee Bucks is it is going to take a lot, but big picture wise, we're only looking at beating the Boston Celtics in the playoffs, right? Because it's clear that they're probably the second most talented team. Now, Boston is really good, don't get me wrong, but there doesn't have to be a ton of things to have happen. It just feels like it's an absolute mountain they have to climb, though.
And that is a perfect point. It's the avalanche of all the outside noise that Milwaukee has brought on itself, that Doc has brought on himself based on his playoff track record. The Boston Celtics won an NBA championship with Doc as its head coach back in 2008. They made the NBA Finals in 2010. From that point, Doc Rivers has never led a team even to a conference finals matchup. That is how much he has struggled, or maybe one time in there, but that is how much he has struggled as a head coach with both the Clippers and, of course, the Philadelphia 76ers. But this Milwaukee team is still very good. Dame won the NBA All-Star Game MVP. Doc Rivers was the head coach of the Eastern Conference that pulled off the outright upset, and Giannis was the captain. Does that momentum propel anything here in this home stretch of the NBA season? I don't know. What would it take? I don't think all that much. Boston, I believe, is going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I feel pretty solid about that. The second team, if Joel Embiid is fully healthy for a playoff push, maybe it's Philadelphia. Do I trust the Knicks or the Cavs more than the Bucks? No, not necessarily. So despite being 21-34-1 against the spread at the break, second worst cover percentage around the association, despite the fact they have dropped 7 of 10 games under Doc Rivers, I actually don't think it takes all that much for the Bucks at least to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Getting past the Celtics might be a different story. Now out west, the Phoenix Suns in action tonight on the road as a slight underdog in Dallas against the Mavericks. Quickly, by the way, the Bucks in action following the All-Star break tomorrow against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the best team in the Western Conference at this moment. The Suns 33-22 in the 5 spot in the Western Conference standings. So what would it take for Phoenix to win the Western Conference? Plus 750 is that number.
Look, and sometimes it's just simple. We just said with the Milwaukee Bucks, hey, if you can just get great play out of Giannis and they're healthy, sure, they're going to be able to tangle with the Boston Celtics. It's not going to be a blowout if they meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. But when we take a look at the Western Conference, boy, you need a lot of things to go right. But you do have the blueprint for being a championship club. And you know what that blueprint is? Having a really good starting lineup that can perform when healthy. That's Devin Booker. That's Kevin Durant. That's Bradley Beal. But the questions always pop up, and we've been watching all season long. It feels like just a handful of games these guys have played together. Oh, don't worry, Ben. They'll get it together. They'll be healthy at the right time. But will they actually do that? Because we've seen the Phoenix Suns, including last year, go into the playoffs with a talented starting lineup, but not any bench depth that can bail them out and says, hey, Kevin Durant, you're getting older in your career. I still need you for 39, 40, 41 minutes in a game and playing at the highest level for us to even have a chance. The blueprint for success for the Phoenix Suns is number one, health, but also those guys playing good and getting games together down the stretch. It's one of those things, Ben, you just can't put it together like, okay, we didn't play a lot in the regular season, but in the playoffs, it's supposed to click here. Now, you take a look at the price points there, like plus 750 as we're talking about the Suns to take down the West, a lot shorter price on the Milwaukee Bucks, and rightfully so, because the Bucks were looking forward to just taking on the Celtics. If it meets up, basically, you got to win one series here and you can advance. That's not going to be the case for the Phoenix Suns, who last year proved they couldn't do it with a bench that didn't help them out. But the bench is a little bit deeper this year. So the short answer for me, complete health down the stretch and playing well in the playoffs will give them a chance. But the questions here, Ben, are can they actually do that, and will they? And I don't think they will.
Since December 29th, when Bradley Beal fully returned for Phoenix, we have seen the big three in action outside of some rest or some nagging injuries pretty much every night. Health is what it's going to take for Phoenix. I would love to say home floor advantage in the Valley, being one of the top 4 seeds, at least in the opening round. But they trail the Denver Nuggets by 3 games. I think it's going to be tough, even though it's only a 3-game separation at this moment, to even make up that ground. So I'll say health. I've already bet the Phoenix Suns to win an NBA championship at a 12-1 number about a week and a half before the NBA All-Star break. So I believe Phoenix has what it takes with the big three, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, to at least win the Western Conference. SGA for MVP. The numbers for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander before the All-Star break, averaging better than 31 points per game. I'm pretty sure he has scored 30-plus in 40 or 38 of the 53 for Oklahoma City, 43 of the 55, something like that. And the Oklahoma City Thunder are 37-17 this year, second best record in the Western Conference. What would it take for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to unseat Nikola Jokic as the odds-on favorite and win the NBA MVP award?
Yeah, here's what you need. It's more of a chain reaction here. Quite frankly, it really can happen because you take a look at the Denver Nuggets currently sitting in the 4th seed here, only 3 games back of the Minnesota Timberwolves. You have the Timberwolves, OKC Thunder, Clippers, and the Nuggets here. If you tell me right now, the Denver Nuggets go, okay, Jamal Murray was banged up here. More importantly here, Nikola Jokic, we want to just keep him healthy for the stretch run. We'll take our top 5 seed and go away. That's going to get those bonus points taken away from Nikola Jokic. Now, granted, he's going to have his triple-doubles. He's going to look fantastic. But if you're not pressing towards that number one, giving yourself those extra points here at the end of the season, that's going to worry. Also, you take a look here at the Los Angeles Clippers, the same thing. You tell me right now, those Clippers will be healthy the rest of the way. There's a legitimate chance they can take down that number 1 overall seed, which would also hamper OKC. But also, you take a look at the Minnesota Timberwolves at the top of the heap right now, a game and a half above OKC. If they falter down the stretch, nobody's going to be really surprised. Like, hey, nice season for the Timberwolves. They wound up as the 3rd or 4th seed. It's no big deal when they could have had that top shot here. So for me, you need those teams. I'm talking about the Clippers and the Nuggets, not to strive for that 1 seed, and you need to overtake the Minnesota Timberwolves. And also a correlation would be, of course, if that happens and OKC is the number 1 seed, you know darn well that's 30-plus points a night from SGA, so he's playing damn well coming down the stretch as well. So it's not too bad of a setup here for SGA to get that done. He just needs a couple of those teams to not worry so much, Ben, about that number 1 overall seed.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the official numbers, 30-plus in 39 of the 53 that he has played this year for OKC. What would it take? First and foremost, the Thunder getting the top overall seed in the Western Conference. SGA to win the NBA MVP, second best number, plus 210. For Oklahoma City to get the Western Conference's number 1 seed, third best price out of the 4 teams available in the market at plus 290. I think those two things are correlated and maybe some voter fatigue for the Denver Nuggets. We'll show this board here. Maybe we do this to end out hour number 1. We'll hear from our producers during the break or later on in the show. We were going to ask what would it take for the Denver Nuggets to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference. 4th best price out of the 4 teams that are separated by only 3 games. The T-Wolves, Thunder, Clippers, and then the Nuggets. It's plus 550 for Denver. We'll continue that big picture conversation as the NBA emerges out of the All-Star break throughout this show here on a Thursday as action in the association picks up once again. We'll be back in just a few. Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We end out this opening hour of a Thursday Live right here on the early line. We showed you the board before the break. Now we break it down here for the Denver Nuggets, the reigning NBA champions, the reigning 1 seed in the Western Conference, the reigning Western Conference champs as well. Denver enters the All-Star break and emerges out of it with the 4th best record in the Western Conference, 36-19. They are 3 games back of the top spot, currently occupied by the Timberwolves. There are 3 teams in front of them for that number 1 spot: Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and the Los Angeles Clippers. So what would it take for the Nuggets to be the 1 seed once again out west? They have the 4th best price to do so at plus 550.
Yeah, they're 3 games clear already of the Phoenix Suns. So let's remove them from the equation and say, who can they jump over? Well, we really laid it out here. The Los Angeles Clippers maybe being injured or saying, you know what, let's not get injured here. It's more important to be healthy for the playoffs than getting the number 1 overall seed. Then we quickly flip it over to the 1 and 2 seeds right now, OKC and Minnesota, and you play it out as these guys aren't ready for the spotlight here, and they falter down the stretch. Enter in the Denver Nuggets now as the number 1 overall seed. Seems feasible that could happen, Ben.
Yeah, I actually don't think it is, because when I look at Denver right now, I think they're going to be a part of the Western Conference Finals once again. However, I do believe in the 2 teams at the top of the Western Conference table. Maybe that's naive, but I do believe Minnesota and Oklahoma City are going to be there battling for the top spot at the end of the year. Both Minnesota and Oklahoma City, 2 of the 11 easiest schedules remaining around the NBA to end out this season. The Clippers have the hardest. The Nuggets, the 4th easiest schedule out in the Western Conference. So they also have the ability to make up some ground here following the All-Star break. I just don't believe Denver is going to surpass Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and Los Angeles in front of them. Maybe they'll get a team. They're only a game behind the Clippers for the 3rd spot, a game and a half behind OKC for that 2nd spot. I just think it's too much ground to make up for Denver entering the home stretch of this NBA campaign. More when Hour 2 starts in less than a minute.